Greetings everyone, welcome to another Imperfectly Sung song. Now following on from The Monk of York, this is another silly instalment from the semi-famous geologist and songwriter Pete Ryder. It's the Ballad of Albert Goodfellow. Some of his songs are more serious, so I'll probably sing some of them later, but these two were my favourites as a child. We had a tape of Ryder's songs that we often played on long car journeys, which I always enjoyed. So one reason why I like the Ballad of Albert Goodfellow is that it's very satirical in its commentary of how a simple situation very quickly escalates and becomes so misunderstood, and it's very exaggerated, being a silly song. And the thing about its structure is that it has two main melodies which alternate, but there's no particular rule as to when each one comes in. The main one sometimes goes only once or twice or even three times, and then the secondary one comes in. So that's interesting to me, but I don't expect many others to find it interesting. So anyway, the Ballad of Albert Goodfellow. This is the tale of Albert Goodfellow, who was an ordinary person, just a bit like you and me. He went shopping once a week. He went shopping for to seek a packet of arrowroot biscuits. They were his only luxury. When he arrived at the biscuit shop, at the door he had to stop, for the door was closed and the shop was shut, a sorrowful sight to see. A notice said, "The shop is closed, because the shopkeeper is indisposed. Please send a stamped addressed biscuit tin to the Royal Infirmary." Albert looked around himself. His thoughts were in a jumble. Somewhere in the distance he heard his stomach rumble. It was almost closing time. The clock said 10 to 6. Oh, where would he be without his weekly Bix? Albert looked across the road to where the supermarket rose. He'd never been in one before, but this was an emergency. It was half a mile long and half a mile wide, but almost twice that big inside, and Albert thought they must have biscuits there, so he went inside to see. He went up to the girl at the desk and said, "Please, miss, I have a request. Oh, could you kindly tell to me just where the biscuits are?" She looked at him as if he were a child, gave a sympathetic smile, picked up a microphone, turned a dial, and said, "Consumer Inquiry to Information Center, please assist in location of biscuit stack 2467B. A voice came booming from above. It said, "Will the customer please take note? He should go straight down the aisle and turn right at shampoos for greasy hair. Then left at continental cheese, right at coffee, on past tea, turn left straight after processed peas, and then he will be there." 1,000 eyes, they looked at him. Each shopper stopped to stare. Poor Albert felt embarrassed and wished he wasn't there. A woman said, "Hey, mister, don't you know you're turning red?" Albert picked up his trolley, and down the aisle he fled. He raced on down past pie fillings, past stuffing, spice and seasoning. Housewives laughed hysterically as Albert thundered through, but he cornered too fast at potted meat. The trolley's tire burst with the heat. It lost a wheel, Albert lost his feet, and went headlong into pet food. 1,000 tins of cat food, they towered up to the sky. 50 different varieties, each stacked 20 tins high. But Albert went straight through them without touching the ground, and like the walls of Jericho, the tins came tumbling down. Throughout the supermarket, pandemonium broke loose, with screaming from the crowd and the crash of falling tins. People rushing for the door, meeting in the chaos and uproar with an enthusiastic army of local cats making their way in. The manager came rushing with vengeance in his eyes on whoever had caused disruption of his private enterprise. He determined to find the culprit and bring him to bay. Like a Swiss mountain goat, he leapt to the top of a salad cream display. A dazed Albert came crawling from beneath the pile of super catto meat. The manager, high above, looked down and cried, "That's him!" But as he shouted, the display began to shake. Beneath his feet he heard bottles break. He fell 35 feet onto the sponge cakes, which sadly were still in their tins. Outside in the street by now the police were arriving, but around the supermarket door chaos still reigned supreme. A tearful lady in a flowery hat was rescuing half-drowned and sticky cats with several students from local flats, from a river of salad cream. Meanwhile, in bathroom necessities, Albert found himself trapped. The lights had gone, and round his knees a tide of salad cream lapped. All exits were sealed by fallen tins. His prospects, they seemed bleak. They might have biscuits, he said to himself, but I shan't come here next week. The force of law and order, they were debating the agency responsible for the devastation. They didn't know where to begin. Perhaps he might be a homicidal killer, or at the very least an urban guerrilla. He might even be someone after the till. So they called the army in. That night at 11 o'clock, in the Arkwright's cold, harsh glare, tanks surrounded the building on the ground, helicopters in the air, and a posse of Texan oilmen, called in from the North Sea, were dispersing a slick of salad cream by the university. The chief of police in his bulletproof waistcoat marched up to the building, with complete ground and air cover, and a megaphone in his hand. He said, "We are prepared to negotiate. We'll give you a seat at a public hall debate, or at least save conduct to a Near Eastern state. What are your demands?" The gathered crowd fell silent, awaiting the reply, till a quavering voice, it was Albert, spoke up from deep inside. He said, "I have just one request, and I'm pleading on my knees. Will you let me go home with £half of arrowroot biscuits? Please!" Thank you very much.